my friend. I heard her in the background.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to reach out to our good friend Greg Palast here in about 30 seconds, see if we can get him on the line, Jason, and get a perspective of what is happening in Georgia. And of course, that is, a seat that, a lot of mainstream media is focused on. And my hope is that she becomes the first, she makes history tonight. As I tweeted out last night, it's the state of history of Martin Luther King, of course, from there. I really feel that this is a extremely important situation for the Democrats to win back that governor's seat. And, that's the scenario. All right. It's now time to play a little bit of I Love LA, even though he's 3,000 miles away. The great investigative journalist, the great book and movie, Best Democracy Money Can Buy. He is on the road and, he joins us from, the great city of Atlanta, Georgia. He probably misses Los Angeles, but he'll be back there in a few days. Greg Palast joins us. Greg, how are you, my man?
Well, now you tell me. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. The polls have just closed here, and it closed half an hour ago, and we're waiting to see whether vote suppression can be overcome by enthusiasm. I'm looking at a sign. I'm in Westview, where we're having a block party watch party on watching the return, and I'm standing next to a sign that says 100% of my block votes. And so you see these all over Atlanta, where 100% of the people vote, or I should say try to vote, because I've never seen vote suppression on this scale. I've been doing this 18 years, since the 2000 election. And I saw Florida. I saw Ohio in 2004. I've seen the worst of trying to stop black people from voting. I've never seen anything like this that's in Georgia. If you go to gregpalast.com, you'll see a woman who is 92 years old, Christine George. I was at the polling station today. She's been voting at the same polling place since 1968, the year King was murdered. Same place. She went in to vote today. She's 92. They said her entire voter record is vanished. And her granddaughter was absolutely shaken up, totally in tears, devastated that this would happen to this woman who was part of the civil rights movement here in Georgia. And here's the ugly thing. I sued the Secretary of State, Brian Kemp, who was withholding information about his massive purge of the voter rolls, canceling 500,000 voter registrations last year alone. 500,000. Now, Brian Kemp is the Secretary of State. He's in charge of the vote, but he's also the candidate for governor, the GOP candidate for governor against Stacey Abrams, the first black woman ever nominated by a major party for governorship. And the only way he thinks he can win, I guess, is by removing voters.
Well, yeah, he's already done hundreds of thousands already. We're looking at a CNN monitor here that I just froze for a second. Kemp at 71%, Abrams at 28%. Just one.
I've been talking about individuals, and I'm here having dinner with the Atlanta filmmaker Raheem Shabazz, who was denied the right to vote. And here's Stacey Hopkins. I'm on live on Free Speech with Jeff Santos Show. Stacey Hopkins. What happened to your son, Stacey? This is Atlanta.
So what happened today, my son was part of the suit that I filed in 2017, and we went to go to our precinct, and he didn't show up on the poll books. There's apparently some miscommunication between our Board of Elections and DMV, and it's a problem. My son walked away with a provisional ballot, so we all know those provisional ballots are the last to be cast. So, I'm still pretty upset, but now that I see Greg, I'm cool. And now we're waiting for the result.
Well,
Stacey Hopkins sued Brian Kemp and returned 159,000 voters to the voter rolls, but there's still 500,000 that were purged, and that's what we are, what the community is trying to overcome right now. I had experts go through those purge rolls. We went literally with computers name by name by name. Brian Kemp said 400,000 people have moved out of Georgia or out of Atlanta, and we found out that 340,134 had never moved anywhere. Let me repeat that: 340,134 voters should never have been purged from the voter rolls, and that's what Brian Kemp did last year alone. None of those voters were given any notice. They're just like Stacey's son, who show up without any notice and told you're not on the voter rolls. They give you a provisional ballot, and which I call a placebo ballot. Makes you think you voted, but you haven't. Provisional ballots, there may be 30, 40, 50,000 of these in the state today. If they are not counted, that's going to be very hard for the voters to pick the governor, that is Stacey Abrams. And but the problem is that the guy who determines which votes get counted, which provisional ballots get counted, is Brian Kemp. You have this insane situation in which the guy who's running for governor gets to determine whether his opponent's votes get counted.
It's unbelievable.
Jimmy Carter has gone crazy. You know, he was the governor of Georgia, and he says, this guy should resign. It's insane.
Well, now, let's think about this, folks. We're talking to Greg Palast, who's live in Atlanta, Georgia, the great investigative journalist who has been suing Brian Kemp, the Secretary of State, who Jesse Jackson on my Free Speech TV show said is the referee, the umpire, and the scorekeeper, and the candidate for the Republicans for governor. You can't have them all. And, I know you're working with Reverend Jackson as well,
yes.
Greg. This to me is just a disgrace. It's a disgrace. But, we are in the moment here, and I want to ask you, because we don't have a couple more minutes left here in this segment.
Right.
The fact is that, and we'll be talking to Greg Palast tomorrow morning on our Free Speech TV taping for Sunday, by the way, 10 o'clock Eastern Time, 7 o'clock Pacific, on Sunday on Free Speech TV, the Jeff Santos TV show. Don't miss that. And the fact is that, there's this runoff scenario, which again I know usually favors Republicans, but is the idea of a month to get more people the chance to vote, is that a good thing? It seemed to be on the surface.
Absolutely. That's why I think that they figure they got to steal it tonight outright. They have to push 50,000 people to provisional ballots and not count them. That's the problem. And so when you get these counts, they say 100% of the votes counted. No, it isn't. When you have a precinct that says 100% reported, you're not getting the reports of the provisional ballots because they're not even open for a week. And so I think they're going to try to steal it outright. But if not, if it goes to a runoff in which the case of the election will be reheld in 30 days, Georgiaa's unusual that way. If both candidates don't get 50% because there's a Libertarian Party, which might take that difference. If it goes to a runoff, I think Kemp is quite fearful, because I have said, and the NAACP has said, and Reverend Jackson has said, that we're going into federal court to get those people returned to the voter rolls. We're not talking about a few voters. We're talking about 340,134 voters wrongly purged, and get those people back on the voter rolls. I was with today a Latina who was in DeKalb County. They try to even stop her from getting the provisional ballot. That's one of the things that they're doing too. Not only are they shunting people to provisional ballots, but their first gambit is to tell you, you gotta go. Like the 92-year-old woman, they just told her, scram, out of here, old lady. You don't even get a provisional ballot, so we can't even argue or fight for to get those provisional ballots counted. So this is an ugly, ugly fight. We are back to 1958.
Unreal.
This is turning the clock way back.
I got 1 minute for you. Do you, this Libertarian candidate can be the initial savior here and get enough to stop Kemp from getting 50+1? I
don't know. I mean, if you really counted all the votes, it'd be hard for Stacey Abrams to lose simply because she's got the turnout.
Of course.
But the difference is that I think we're going to be seeing, massive provisional voting, so that the Libertarian might, as you say, save the day, at least for now. but I think that while Republicans usually think you're right, that they can win on runoff, it won't happen this time. So it's really what's ugly. It's not about who gets the most votes. In Kemp's case, it's whether Kemp stopping the vote overcomes the voter enthusiasm. This is Jim Crow. I mean, it's new Jim Crow. It's actually Dr. James Crow, database analyst. That's what they're using. And so, look, if you want to see these voters, meet Raheem, meet the 92-year-old woman, Christine Jordan, meet Ashley Jones, the voters who have lost their vote, and get the information on who was purged, how they were purged. Just go to gregpalast.com and watch those films. And very important, don't miss the Jeff Santos Show this Sunday morning when we take apart what happened.
We will do that, and we will talk with Greg tomorrow. Greg, get some rest. I know it's going to be a crazy rest of the night for you. Hopefully we can bring Miss Abrams to victory here. This is a tragic scenario. We're going to be following this, online and obviously tomorrow on Free Speech TV.
And that, I just want the voters to win, and that's what should be in democracy. And thanks, Jeff, for giving me this opportunity, which mainstream media is doing its best to ignore. At least the American mainstream. I was just on The Guardian, which is the most important, is the mainstream of the world, just not in America. Okay, speak to you later.
That's outrageous. And, our good friend Mark Taylor-Canfield following you tonight out of Seattle is a big fan of yours. And, and we had Representative Barbara Lee on who was talking about this outrageous voter suppression. So there are a lot of people that are with you that thank you for being, a whistleblower on this issue. And Greg, we'll talk to you tomorrow morning. Thank you. Okay. Say hello to your friend, Miss Hopkins. Tell her to keep fighting. And we will talk to you in less than 24 hours.
You got me. Bye.
Thank you, Greg. All right, we're going to switch from the great state of Georgia. And, folks, this is a real travesty. We're going to be following this. Not only Free Speech TV tomorrow, we'll be taping for our friends, to deliver the show on Sunday. But we'll be following this in the radio show tomorrow night and Thursday because this story doesn't seem to be going away. I am hoping and praying that there is going to be a runoff here. Again, we've talked about this before. A runoff usually favors the Republicans, but in this case, if it is indeed a runoff, then there will be, I think, a victory at the end of the day. A great Christmas, a great Hanukkah for Stacey Abrams, and I think it could be a really, really wonderful month of December, which is when the race will take place, a month from now. All right, so let me know, Jason, when we have our good friend Mark Taylor-Canfield on the line, and hopefully we can get him there. Do we? All right, let's go to Seattle, Washington, where he is a great musician, a great journalist, a fantastic contributor to the Jeff Santos Show every Tuesday here. Our good friend Mark Taylor-Canfield joins us. Mark, happy Election Day. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good, Jeff. Glad to join you. I'm really glad to hear one of my favorite journalists, Greg Palast, on beforehand. So I'm just going to quote Greg from now on. People ask me about election midterms 2018. I'll just say, according to Greg Palast, it was an ugly, ugly fight.
Yeah, you got that right. He tells it like it is, and that's what's happening, unfortunately, tragically, in the great state of Georgia. And, this to me is going to be, a very long night, and I'm hoping that it is going to be a runoff. I think that, that's probably the best way for her to win, and obviously more sunshine comes to this. That to me is the only way this is going to happen. And, the more that there is sunshine, this has become a national race anyways because of this voter suppression. I think the better off it is. And like I say, maybe it'll be a happy Christmas and happy Hanukkah for all of us, if she can indeed, win and people's votes actually count. You heard the story of a 92-year-old woman there, voting all the same way in 68, and all of a sudden, she wasn't able to vote. Outrageous. I mean, this is how the Republicans do it. They just cheat. They've been doing it since 2000, and maybe even before that. All right. Well, look, Mark, you got so much to talk about and very little time here. So let me just start off. Adam Smith, Sarah Smith, our good friend Peter from Plant City sent me an email earlier in regards to, Sarah Smith is a key progressive here. I know you guys do mail balloting and so forth, so, at some time we'll find out. But what have you been hearing about that? What have you been hearing about, some of the key ballot initiatives as well in your state?
Well, this is some of the discussion we had earlier. As Executive Director of Democracy Watch News, we had a little meeting today with the coordinating editor about what was happening in Washington. And, I've got my eye on a few things. First of all, the polls are not closing here for another three and a half hours. So we got a ways to wait because nobody's going to report any results until after 8:00 p.m. Pacific time tonight. But Senator Maria Cantwell obviously has a very safe seat. She's not going to be beat by a Republican. I can guarantee you that. We had no governor's race, but the Democrats in Washington State are expected to pick up a few more seats in the state legislature. And there are predictions of a pretty good turnout in terms of the mail-in balloting. So, but I'm keeping my eye on a couple of the ballot measures, Jeff, and a couple of the Washington State elections for Congress. And the ballot measures that I'm watching are Initiative 940, which we talked about on your program last Tuesday. It's a police reform bill to make it easier to actually prosecute police officers. And we talked about the Seattle Times investigative piece called Shielded by the Law, where they found that between the years 2004 and 2015, 213 people were killed by police in Washington State. And exactly one police officer was actually charged with any crime. We also have Initiative 1631, which would impose a carbon fee, and Seattle and the Northwest in general not being a big fossil fuel friendly area, I think that has a good chance to pass. It's definitely being promoted as, only you can prevent big oil from buying this election. That's what it was all about. And it was about standing up to big oil companies. So it was endorsed by, a lot of local newspapers and media. So I think it has a good chance to pass. As far as Sarah Smith, I kind of doubt that she's going to actually win, but we don't know, of course, because there's no results yet. So you can't quote me on that. But she is the Democratic Socialist, progressive, Medicare for all, free college education, get the bad money out of politics, candidate. And she definitely represents the future, and the trend in the Northwest here, which is for a very progressive style of democratic socialism. She's running in the 9th district against, 21-year incumbent Democrat Adam Smith. So the top two vote getters in our primaries in Washington State get to go on to the general election. And in this, particular district, in the 9th district, it's two Democrats. And Adam Smith has been there forever. He's not related to Sarah Smith, but he has been criticized by Sarah for accepting a lot of money from defense contractors and being kind of a hawkish kind of guy there. So the other race that nobody has really been talking about nationally that I know of is, except a few markets, is Dino Rossi, former candidate for governor who was involved in two of the closest governor's elections in the history of the United States in Washington State, where the recounts just went on for months, Jeff. When he was running against, Christine Gregoire twice.
Right.
And she won both times in those elections, the Democrat. But Dino Rossi is a longtime Republican. He's being questioned definitely as a conservative Republican in the state, running in the 8th district. And he is trying to replace Dave Reichert, who, before he became a member of Congress, was our King County sheriff. But Dave Reichert is stepping aside, and so Dino Rossi is trying to replace him. But it's going to be an uphill battle for him, actually, because the Democratic candidate in that race seems to be showing very well in the polls, and also the voter turnout in that particular district where Dino Rossi was running was over 50% for Democrats, and I think
wow, that's good. I want to interrupt you because we got some CNN projections coming in here. Jennifer Wexton has been projected by CNN to beat Barbara Comstock. That's another pickup for the Democrats, and Democrats need to pick up now 22 Republican seats, and I think they are now up 6 or so in this. So that's a really good sign for the Democrats winning there in Virginia. Another number, 13% of the vote in, Mr. Cordray is up now 55-42 over the Republican Mike DeWine. That's the Ohio governorship. Very, very key state for the Democrats to pick up. Of course, that's always a swing state in the presidential years, going forward. So just a couple of things. And Mark, this is going to be a wild and woolly night. I know you obviously will be up, into the wee hours, which will be almost 5 a.m. in the East Coast. But, are you seeing what, we have been talking about all day, and I've been seeing on MSNBC and CNN and Friends of Democracy Now! And so forth, these long lines, of young voters, about 6% from 2016 up, and of first-time voters, and a lot of them are young folks. I heard the words today, which you don't usually hear unless you're in a political science class, that it's my civic duty to vote. And when people who are 22 or 20 years old are saying that, then I think people are getting engaged. It obviously reminds me a lot of the young people who were involved in Bernie's campaign. And let me just say this, if Gillum and O'Rourke win tonight, let me just say that Bernie Sanders had a lot to do with it. They may not have, I know he endorsed Mr. Gillum and went down there and campaigned for him, so his involvement, I don't know if he has any relationship with Mr. O'Rourke, but I think that has to be said. And I think that's why we're seeing a lot of millennials, voting. Millennials. Mark, what's your thoughts there?
Well, let's see. I will be headed to the celebration victory party for Pramila Jayapal's re-election, our very progressive member of Congress. And I think she also is supported by a lot of young folks who probably got involved through the Bernie-crat movement. And also, after Trump was elected, there were a lot of student marches and student walkouts in this part of the country. And I heard those students making speeches about how, we're not going to ignore politics anymore, that this is, our duty and our obligation as the future of the country to get involved and to make change and to show up at the polls. So we'll probably see that in Washington State. I mean, it's been a trend for a while anyway, and I think Sarah Smith probably represents that too. The students have been a big part of pushing the progressive movement in Washington State. They were also a big part of the Women's March. And I also heard a lot of students talking during those huge marches, one of which was at least 100,000 people here in Seattle. I heard a lot of students talking about taking responsibility and getting involved. I also, we had a lot of young folks who became, PCOs, precinct officers in the Democratic Party in Washington State during the candidacy of Senator Sanders. So, yeah, I think it's been a trend for a while. And I think, Pramila Jayapal, Sarah Smith, they definitely represent a more youth-oriented kind of movement. And probably Shama Sawan, our city council member, too. They're all sort of part of this new, largely led by females, a movement for progressive economic and environmental justice in the area. And I think it's translated really well since Trump was elected, actually, into some political organizing. And there will be marches actually tomorrow in Seattle, regardless of the results of this election, because I think the issue will still be, that the people in the White House are, leading the country in the wrong direction. And so there will still be people out, marching in the streets. So on Saturday as well, I believe there are some marches going on across the country.
Yeah,
but I am concerned, I have to say, about the voter suppression. And also, we had this heads up about some machines in Texas that weren't working well. And I was tweeting earlier today about Brooklyn, one of the the Brooklyn
They have to get an act from the fire department to open up the doors, I guess, right? Let me ask you this, Mark. In terms of voter suppression, in terms of the gun issue, we obviously had that awful tragedy at the synagogue in Pittsburgh, 2 Saturdays ago. Is it in your mind that we are in a situation where, gun violence, we saw the young kids in Florida, take this issue front and center. Is this an issue that's going to be playing out, whether it's in the streets or, in City Hall or in Olympia, at the State House, when it comes to gun safety and gun control?
There is a ballot on the measure in Washington State that would make it more difficult to attain assault-style weapons. So, yes, it's on the ballot here, and people are voting on that issue as we speak. And in general, Seattle is not a big pro-NRA type of area. So I think they had a gun buyback program here a few years ago, and they got hundreds of weapons turned in. So people aren't really big on the gun issue here, and it's just part of the progressive Northwest kind of thing. So we'll see what happens on that ballot issue. But yeah, it's definitely being addressed in Washington State as we speak.
I also see that medicinal marijuana is gaining strength, and obviously recreational marijuana too. That a lot of it started there in Seattle and of course Colorado too. All right, Mark, we got to run here. We're going to do some final results here before we rock and roll. Anything else on the horizon that Mark Taylor-Canfield is working on?
Oh yeah, well I'm still doing the MTC report. We're putting up a lot of videos right now. In fact, there's a bunch going up today over there at YouTube, so you can kind of follow my journalism there. We also post a lot of my music and some music videos and cartoon, political satire, animation, and stuff. There's like 380 videos up there, Jeff, now, so there's a lot there. I'm still writing a Truth Out, and we're doing stuff with Democracy Watch News, including the Democracy Cast, which is our podcast, and you can get it at iTunes or Libsyn or all over the place. So, yeah, a lot going on in Seattle, and, I'm just waiting to see what's happening in the rest of the country, and we'll be interested to talk to you again next week about the results.
Well, all these results are. Mark Taylor-Canfield, thank you so much, my friend. We will talk to you next Tuesday. All the best. All right, just a few things, folks, going on. MSNBC has called the race for Sherrod Brown. In Indiana, Mr. Donnelly is still down, but 30% reporting a good 12-point lead for the Republican Braun. I don't know what that means, if that's ever going to close up, and if Donnelly can come back, not sure about that. Again, we will be tweeting out tonight at Jeff Santos Show. Tomorrow we'll be taping with a number of guests, including our regulars, Jerry Austin, Brad Bannon, and David Paleologist. Get all these results in. Sunday, 10 a.m. We'll be doing that. Of course, we'll be back here tomorrow night with Joe Williams, amongst many other guests. We will continue to tweet out tonight, folks, and post on Facebook. Okay, we'll be talking to Greg Palast tomorrow. Keep an eye on Georgia. That could be a runoff. There's a lot going on there. DeSantis is down now by 3 or 4 points to Gillum, so go Andrew, and go Democrats. Thank you to all of our guests, Representative Barbara Lee, of course, Mark Taylor-Canfield, Greg Palast, the great Barracuda herself, Melissa Tomlinson, Robert Craig, and thank you all for contributing, listening, your questions tonight. Keep on fighting, folks. We'll be on all night online, and feel free to tweet back at Jeff Santos Show. But right now, it's my time to say I gotta go.
You're listening to 1590 WSMN Nashua.
USA Radio News.
Polls closed at 7 o'clock Eastern Time in Alabama, Florida, Georgia, New Hampshire, South Carolina, Vermont, and Virginia. Voters across the country experienced long lines, broken machines, and even humidity playing a part in election voting in North Carolina. The voters I spoke to, though, said it was worth it for them to get out and vote.
And I've never seen anything like this before.
And I'll wait as long as it takes to get my vote in, so hopefully everybody else feels the same way.
Republican Speaker of the House Paul Ryan joined Fox News and said people need to remember one thing. It's always about the economy.
We do think we should be talking about our strong economy because it's been spectacular, and the Democrats are talking about rolling back and raising taxes, more spending. They're proposing to basically undo all the good progress that we've been having.
Former Vice President Joe Biden came out and said today he'd be dumbfounded if the Democrats don't win the House by a comfortable margin. You're listening to USA Radio News. In all, 155 statewide initiatives are also on the ballot in 37 states. In North Dakota and Michigan, for example, voters have the chance to legalize the recreational use of marijuana. Kristen Tate is a columnist with The Hill. She joined Fox News and said passing marijuana initiatives seems to be a growing trend across the United States.
These kind of initiatives are very much in line with public opinion nationally on this issue. 60% of Americans support the legalization of marijuana. It's a figure that only increases every year.
Health care and immigration were high on voters' minds as they cast ballots in the midterm elections. People do still believe the economy is headed in the right direction, although some people also believe, about 44%, that we are not headed in the right direction as a nation. This voter told me it's time we come together as a nation.
It's very sad times that we live in, and I think we all have to first be Americans, and everyone has to appreciate and respect each other's opinions.
Once polls close, keep it here for election results. This is USA Radio News.
The country, and I have candidates and campaigns in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Virginia, in Colorado, in Nevada, in Texas, in North Carolina, and in Georgia, and in Southern California. Everywhere I go, people are excited about this election. People, of course, are voting early, but also people know what the issues are. They know what's at risk, and they know that we need a Congress that's going to put a check on this Trump administration. And so I see this being a defining moment in the country, and hopefully people who haven't voted as of tonight will get out and vote for Democrats, because this is a moment that we cannot miss.
We're talking to Representative Barbara Lee here on the Jeff Santos Show. Of course, listening on RevolutionRadioNetwork.com. We will continue to have these next 2 hours here broadcast, and also on Free Speech TV. And, of course, you can go to Free Speech TV, hashtag VoteFSTV on Twitter, and post questions for Representative Lee, and we'll get them to her as well. Let me ask you this, Representative. I think that we have some stars in the making here, and I look at and it's people of color. I look at Miss Abrams in the great state of Georgia. I look at Andrew Gillum in Florida and Beto O'Rourke in Texas. I think the inspiration that Barack Obama had in 2008, that obviously, before my time, but John Kennedy did in 1960. I think that's what Democrats, really yearn for, and I think the nation yearns for, particularly after this destructive President of the United States. I mean, I have words that the FCC would find me, but I can't say it right now about him. Your thoughts on this?
Yes, people want hope, and everywhere I go, when people feel like there's nothing that they can do, I remind them that every vote counts, and that we have to have hope and believe that we can turn this around. And people really are beginning to see how they know how destructive this administration has been, but they also now really understand that by not voting, and those 77,000 people who did not vote in the presidential election actually did vote, and they cast that vote which elected Donald Trump by their not voting. And so I think people really inspired around the country and really understanding that by not voting we risk electing people who will go along with this very dangerous Trump administration. And I see people coming together unified. I mean, I see people of color, I see young people, older people, white people, African Americans, Latinos, Asians, Native Americans. We have a chance to elect the first Native Americans to the House of Representatives tonight. And so I just think this, Reverend Barbara, I believe, called it correctly as the birth, really, of a new nation. And that's what's taking place, I think, at the polls tonight.
That's fantastic. California, of course, is going to play a big role in the House, and particularly in Southern California. I know that there's a number of your colleagues from down south that are involved in the races down there. What are you hearing about Orange County, Riverside, even some in, I guess, Los Angeles County, too?
Sure, and I have visited many of the candidates in Southern California. These races are very close. It's not Democrats are ahead. And these are hard Republican districts, some that aren't quite as difficult as others. Some of them are considered toss-ups, which, of course, should be Republican leaning. And so all of these races, I think we have a very good shot of winning tonight, and it's all about death turnout. And that's what we've been focused on, is making sure that everyone knows that their vote and that they get to the polls. So early voting has been very good, and I believe that we have a very good shot in California to help. And we always say the path to victory starts in California.
Campaigning for president, this administration,
we're talking with Representative Barbara Lee of the great state of California here on the Jeff Santos Show. And as I said earlier, we are going to be currently working with our friends at Free Speech TV and asking questions to Representative Barbara Lee. This comes in from a listener saying, 20 years in office, is there anything that feels different to you about these midterms that you haven't felt before?
Sure. These midterms this time around feel different in the sense that there are many first voters, new people who have been written off as apathetic, people who are low, as they call them, low propensity voters, because they haven't felt the connection to their elected officials. And the candidates who are running are for real. They're authentic. They're connecting with people throughout their districts and throughout the country. And so this is a very exciting midterm because of the energy of the constituency and because of where people are in this country who see and understand the risks and understand how by not voting, Donald Trump was elected. And that thing is really very clear to me is the new awareness of the connection between not voting and a terrible administration that is rolling back the human civil rights of so many people in this country.
Well, there's no doubt. We're talking to Representative Barbara Lee here on the Jeff Santos Show. We are having a little issue with her volume, but we're trying to get that squared away, folks, as much as we can. Let me take this question from myself. Do you sense that young people, millennials in particular, I see there's like at least 6% rise from 2010 of first-time voters. I would presume most of them are millennials. That seems to be, I see watching these lines on MSNBC and other TV networks of people in line at universities and so forth for a midterm. I think that, the real destruction, verbally, and of course the tragedy that happened in Pittsburgh, the pipe bomber that, to me, I think young people are saying, this is not the country that I want to live in, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now. And they're taking, I heard people use the term civic duty today, which I never really thought of. You talk to 22-year-olds too. You have them on your staff. I mean, I don't know how many of them use the term civic duty, but I heard that 3 or 4 times today when these reporters would be talking to somebody along a voting line. Your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. And also they understand that they don't want to be, nor should they have to be saddled with debt. Just to receive a college education. And so they understand that Democrats are fighting for debt-free college education and for workforce training and for a better future for the people, for their lives. And millennials, I believe, we need to look at young people more. And I think more candidates now are listening to the voices of young people and communicating a position or an agenda that reflects the aspirations of young people. And yes, they are beginning to talk about their civic duty because I really believe that these young people understand now that a Donald Trump has led to the disaster that they're feeling in terms of their housing, the cost of living, the fragile nature of their health care. I think young people get it, and I'm very proud of what they're doing, and we just have to keep working with young people to really let them know we're connecting with them and that we we value their input and we're working on their behalf.
You know, one of the things that's happened here, and of course we've heard everything, we're going to be talking later with investigative journalist Greg Palast, who's done all this investigation going back to the 2000, hanky-panky that George W. Bush's brother and Miss Harris has done. And of course, 2004, we had former presidential nominee John Kerry on what happened in Ohio. And I worry about what's happening in Georgia and Ohio and other places this time around. You know, Peter in Plant City, Florida, just emailed me and said, why are we not spending money on voting, equipment? And I want to get your thoughts on that, because to me, we spend 60% of our military budget, 60% of our non-discretionary dollars on the military, and yet we can't have first-rate voting machines. Your thoughts?
Yeah, you're absolutely correct, and I have witnessed voter suppression efforts taking place in Georgia, and believe you me, Stacey Abrams, in spite of this voter suppression, her get-out-the-vote effort, her presence, her perspective, her experience, her brilliance, has really galvanized people to really see her as the most qualified and best candidate to be the next governor of Georgia. I'm on the Appropriations Committee, and there were bills passed before we recessed that denied funding for election security. We need to look at voter suppression, reapportionment, gerrymandering, and making sure that I personally believe in paper ballots. We've got to really clean up the corruption in our voting system, and we have to do that through, in many ways, the House of Representatives and the Senate. And that's why we've got to take back the House tonight so we can begin to do this, because voter suppression throughout the country is alive and well, and it's continuing. And we need to fund efforts that would turn this around and stop it. But again, the Republicans refused to fund just this year the voter security initiatives and policies and programs that we have.
What do you sense is, and this is again from our friends at Free Speech TV, you can go to hashtag VoteFSTV. What do you think has changed, giving women, particularly women of color, the desire to get more involved, the desire to run for office?
Well, this is the 50th anniversary of Congresswoman Shirley Chisholm's election. November 5th was yesterday. She was the first African-American woman elected to the House of Representatives. And, Jeff, let me just say, since the first Congress in 1789, I'm the 20th African-American woman, which is really a shame and disgrace. So you can see how far we must go. Women of color are just saying enough is enough. Shirley Chisholm used to say, if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. Well, we have brought our chairs, and we're here to stay. And we are insisting that our voice, our perspective, and our ideas be heard and be valued. As a Democrat and as an African-American woman, I know and recognize how, in many instances, black women have been taken for granted, and we have been the most consistent and most loyal Democratic voters. And so black women and women of color around the country are running for local, state, and national offices, and just saying, we're not going to wait for anyone to sanction this. We're not going to wait for you to say, the power structure to say, it's okay now, you can run. We're just taking our rightful place in the body politic and saying, we're here to stay, enough is enough. And today, and thinking about Shirley Chisholm, who paved the way for so many of us, we honor her legacy. I don't know, being the only African-American woman in Congress, can you imagine what she had to deal with? And,
it's unbelievable to think of it.
We have a long way to go, mind you. But black women and women of color are stepping up, stepping out, speaking out, and really will be and are so important in the policy direction and in the direction of this country. And I always say, to help save the soul of America.
You know, I think the other part of this is so true, and in reflecting, the great late singer, a good friend Aretha Franklin of Respect, And I think that people like yourself have been out there, on the front lines fighting for years. And I'm glad now to see, the likes. And I think, the other part of it too, California is a large Latino population, and it's great to see what Beto O'Rourke is doing. It's great to see what Miss Ocasio-Cortez did in New York a few months back, and again, hopefully again tonight. And I just think that it's so important, for people of color of all backgrounds. There's a Arab American woman running in Michigan. There's such a need for America when you think about the Statue of Liberty and give me your poor and give me your homeless. And then there's Donald Trump that just basically gives you a middle finger. And I just think it's so important to sort of have this diversity. And, of course, with that comes economic diversity. Not everybody, would like Trump or the Bushes, born on third base and thought they hit a triple. And I just think it's really important, that it continues to go out. And this outrageous sort of xenophobia and racism by Donald Trump against people of color fleeing political prosecution, seeking political asylum from places like Honduras and Guatemala and El Salvador, where they can't even get water sometimes in their neighborhood, never mind just live a normal life, want to get it, and they're making them out to be the enemy, like the Third Right is marching through the Rio Grande.
Well, by voting for Democrats tonight, this is sending a major message to this administration that Americans are rejecting hate at the ballot box. And I believe that the large voter turnout that we see around the country is making that statement loud and clear, because this Trump administration has demonized everyone and has tried to turn the clock back to the days of Jim Crow, has tried to turn the clock back to free Roe versus Wade for women's rights, has tried to, destroy our system of immigration, which this country has been built on, the beauty of diversity in terms of our immigrant population, and what he's done with children at the border and snatching children from their mothers and fathers and putting them in prison and making them sleep on cement floors. I mean, the horror of that, which I witnessed for several days, is beyond, imagination. And so people are voting to reject all of this despicable hatred of this administration. And I think a huge turnout that we're witnessing has to do with that. And where polls are still open, I'm encouraging people to get to the ballot box, vote for Democrats, reject hate, and vote for an agenda that's for the people.
One final question for Representative Lee before you roll. The issue to me of health care, and I heard Van Jones, who worked, of course, in the administration for Barack Obama, said this, and he says, the Democrats finally gets a little smarts here and have focused on one issue that everybody discusses. I talked with whistleblower Wendell Potter last night, formerly of Cigna Health Insurance, who came across to the bright side. And to the right side after his company wanted to destroy Michael Moore's movie, The Sicko. And, to me, health care is the issue. No matter if you're for Medicare for all, whether you're for the expansion of Medicaid, whether you're for the concept that I'm very much a fan of, and that is, getting people who are age 55 into Medicare, so reducing the age of eligibility. And, of course, pre-existing conditions. That, to me, is a very simple fundamental. If you can't provide health care and save lives to the constituents of the United States, to voters, to citizens, then, what is your federal government doing? Your final thoughts.
Sure, this is the only industrialized country in the world that doesn't have a universal accessible health care system. And I was part of the effort to help negotiate the Affordable Care Act. And let me tell you, we have made sure that people have health care coverage. And right now we're trying to, in many states, expand Medicaid so that low-income people have better access to health care. But also, it's outrageous that this administration is trying to take away health care from millions of people. And to deny health care to individuals with pre-existing conditions, it's immoral and it's wrong. In many states prior to the ACA, being a woman constituted a pre-existing condition or a higher premium or an insurance policy. That is just downright wrong. And so we have to expand healthcare to make sure we have universal, accessible healthcare that's affordable for everyone, not take it away and reduce the opportunity to live decent, healthy lives. And that requires a healthcare system that works for everyone and not one that requires people to pay so much money when they're sick that they can't survive. We need a healthcare system that provides for primary prevention, for reducing the cost of prescription drugs, which is essential, and for really expanding Medicaid and prevent this administration from destroying Medicare and Medicaid to pay for their tax scam, which costs nearly $2 trillion, which is what they're trying to do. Again, that's why we have to elect Democrats tonight to make sure that we protect what healthcare bills, what healthcare coverage we have, but also the fight to expand it for everybody in this country.
Well, Representative, I know that in the last few months you have been considering the idea of running for leadership. I hope that you do. I hope that you get it. We need progressives like you. We know what is at stake here, and we need leadership. I hope you do indeed run, because I think the American people need you in leadership. And I don't know where you are in this, but I hope you go for it and you actually get there, because we need it. And I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Jeff. I am running for Democratic Caucus Chair. It's a race, and I thank you for your encouragement, and we're doing very well, but we have a lot of members to talk to, because this is really a member-to-member kind of election, and so it's coming very well, but I'm really making my case and talking to members and really talking about how I think that I can help unify the caucus, help find pathways to make sure that members are able to, realize their aspirations in our Democratic caucus and better connect with constituents and voters and voter engagement. So we're working hard on our agenda. We hope to win this. We're working every day on it. And thank you very much.
Well, thank you, and thank you for spending time with us. I know it was a lot of difficulties trying to make this interview happen. So thank you, and thank your great communications person Emma as well. All the best. Hopefully tonight we can all celebrate, and look forward to talking to you as part of a majority. That means chairwoman, that means leader. Looking forward to that time. Thank you so much, Representative Barbara Lee.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for.
Thank you. All right, 42 minutes past the hour. That was Representative Barbara Lee. She again is running for the, I think, third or fourth leadership role in the Democratic Party. Of course, a lot will depend upon who are these new people. Are you going to get 40 new members, 25 new members, whatever it is, and how they go into all of this? But it's an internal thing. Of course, people aren't voting for it from this side. But folks, we've had a number of elected officials on this show, and whether we're not, getting people who are presidential candidates is another question. But people like Barbara Lee, our good friend Ro Khanna from nearby San Jose, Barbara Lee represents Oakland and part of the East Bay. These are people of substance. These are people who want change in our times, and we need that. Because look, it's this simple, folks. We are at a point in our society where we can't afford to just allow status quo to exist. We can't be Democrats in the majority for a couple of years and then they're gone. We can't afford just to sort of go along. With the Republicans, because that's the best we can do. In my opinion, we have a great opportunity here tonight to win back the House and win, like I say, 40 seats. We have the opportunity to win back the Senate and win back several governorships that will be helpful to whoever the Democrats nominate for president in this situation. We are trying to connect with our good friend Robert Craig, and hopefully we will have a chance to talk with him over the next 5 or 10 minutes. And our hope is to try to get him to give us a perspective of what is happening in the great state of Wisconsin. Coming up today, when we get a big, powerful hour, and we'll be going across the country from New Jersey to Georgia to the great state of Washington State, that is, where Mark Taylor-Canfield will be talking with us at that time. There are some poll numbers in from Indiana, but they are very early. They show the Republican candidate ahead right now. But again, I wouldn't look at this because it's quite early in terms of results. And from what I understand, Mr. Donnelly, who's a Notre Dame grad, should do very well in the later. It's 2% in, 59-36 for the Republicans. Should do very well in places like Gary, Indiana, which are great friends like Wayne and Rudy from Chicago know very well.
Looks a little like Paul Ryan.
I know.
And then far-right members of the Freedom Caucus, Glenn Grothman, has a very good chance of losing to former U.S. Senator Herb Kohl's nephew, Dan Kohl. So there are two potential congressional seat pickups here as well tonight.
Well, let me ask you, as we're talking with Robert Craig, Executive Director of Wisconsin Citizen Action here on the Jeff Santos Show, do you think that there is a wave going on here? I mean, I know there's some results early that don't look good in Indiana, but from what I understand, a lot of the so-called experts are feeling that there is going to be a sweep tonight, across the Great Lakes states. From Pennsylvania, of course, the incumbent Mr. Wolf to Whitmer in Michigan, Cordray, and we talked to Jerry Austin about Ohio yesterday, of course, longtime consultant there. And, of course, there's Avers, there's Iowa, and, again, re-electing in Minnesota. The Democrats control that seat right now. How confident are you, I guess, that something like that can occur in the Midwest, where, of course, Trump did, tremendous damage, and, of course, Illinois as well, the Democrats there, Pritzker winning.
Pritzker will certainly win in Illinois, is my understanding. Whether to sweep across the Great Lakes states is still an open question. It depends how big the blue surge is, and there seems to be somewhat of a red surge as well. I think it really could be, I agree with a lot of the pundits who are saying that it could be a Democrat sweep. There could be a huge sweep in Congress and the governorships, but also it could fall short. Right. And also there are a lot of structural factors built in, such as gerrymandered districts, such as photo ID, that make it harder. And that's true. We could actually win by a substantial margin. Democrats could in congressional races and still not take back the House in the worst case scenarios and have the Republicans barely hold on. But I can tell you they're extremely worried in the state. Scott Walker literally was on a right-wing radio show this afternoon saying that he first decrying the lies about pre-existing conditions, which of course they're not, and claiming that if he loses it'll be based on that, but also saying that he has all of his legal team ready for a recount, so counting on trying to pull it out. So that tells you stop at nothing to try to pull out these races if we do end up in a bunch of recounts, and who knows what other electoral rigging we might see.
Yeah, no doubt. Talking with Robert Craig here on the Jeff Santos Show. One of the things that I was watching, this morning and early afternoon, particularly out west, they were showing a lot of young millennial voters in college communities, college campuses, to places like Tempe, Arizona, and Henderson, Nevada, and so forth. A lot of young people in line, and the fact that 2 or 3 of them use the term, it's my civic duty to vote. It's really a wonderful saying that I don't really hear many 22-year-olds, utter. Now, maybe these guys are the exception to the rule, but the other poll that I saw from CNN today is that there is a 6% increase from 2016 of first-time voters. And, that to me is another great indication, for the Democrats that, presumably first-time voters are a lot of younger voters, although not necessarily. But that to me says, good things, for progressives and Democrats. Your views there?
Well, I think that's all happening. The question is it enough in some places, and will it be outweighed by other factors or not? I think there's definitely a Democrat surge, but there are a lot of things that could make the wave fall short. You look at Texas, for example, it looks like there are indications of massive new voters that were not polled. Will that be enough to make up for the very Republican tendency of that state among its white voters, for Beto O'Rourke to come through or not? That's the open question. And so I'm cautiously optimistic. It seems like I'm much more optimistic than, say, the Republican peers seem to be. But nonetheless, nobody knows. This is, I think this could be a close call in a lot of places, and how these break is going to matter a lot. In other words, remember, it's not the bulk of voters, it's how small margins play out in numerous individual districts or individual states.
We're talking with Robert Craig here on the Jeff Santos Show. A couple of minutes remaining here. I'm not sure if you are aware of this, if you have a chance at looking at a monitor, but I am now. Just to the south of you in Indiana, the Republican is ahead, just 2%, showing, I think, like 56-36, something like that. If I'm not mistaken, the Democratic, and having grown up in Chicago, you may be aware of this, the Democratic gains are in Gary and South Bend, which tend to come in later. Is that correct, Robert, in Indiana?
There's also a big chunk in Indianapolis.
Sure.
Because that other northwest part of Indiana is not as populous, relatively speaking, as it used to be. So
Okay.
Indianapolis itself as well, but it's hard to tell with early returns like that where those returns are coming from. And if India has ever anything like Wisconsin, it's not necessarily consistent where what comes in first and what comes in last.
I do remember, I think, both in 2008 and probably in 2012, that Gary was one of the last areas to come in. That's the reason why I ask. All right, let me ask you, since we spoke briefly about this, I actually had a chance to watch the debate on Saturday in between football games, between Bryce and his opponent Steele. Is that his name?
Brian Stiles.
Stiles, okay. I thought that Bryce just manhandled him, and he reminds me of the old blue dog Democrat that understands working class voters that unfortunately a lot of Democrats have got away from. I don't know what this district is, but if there are a lot of blue collar workers, I think he stands a very good chance of winning tonight. Again, I don't know, what the Janesville population is there. Maybe it's too strong of a progressive populace for that area, but I think he's a fantastic candidate. I looked at him and I said, this is what the Democrats need more of, particularly in the Midwest.
We love Randy, and he's, Bernie Sanders left, but is a real working class hero.
Exactly.
He's, in fact, a member of ours, a strong member of ours. So he's a real guy, a regular guy. He's been a union activist for years, a progressive activist. And so incredibly, he's the kind of guy who should be in Congress in this country if we were a legitimate democracy and are going to become one.
Yeah, you're right about that.
The district is that Janesville, Beloit, and Racine have a lot of industrial workers, though, of course, we've also deindustrialized because of global trade agreements to a massive degree. But in order to make Paul Ryan safer, they pulled out Beloit, which also is very working class, and put in a lot of right-wing Milwaukee suburbs, some of the most right-wing suburbs in the country. And so it is a tough district. Things have to go perfect for him. They really tried to the level of propaganda against him, the horrible personal attacks on him, totally over the top. I mean, literally to the point where his brother attacked him in a right-wing ad, and then he was and then Randy had to be defended. It wasn't his choice to do this, by his mother. I mean, that's the level of kind of attack on the right, where the right has just tried to destroy Randy, but it would be absolutely wonderful if he got through.
I'm pulling for him here. I got about 30 seconds. Beto O'Rourke, I know you don't have any more knowledge than I do unless you're hiding something, which I doubt. He is doing it without a pollster. He is doing it, in a much different way. If he wins tonight, I think he could be onto something here. I know our good friend Jerry Austin wants him to run for president, but 15, 20 seconds here, what you think it means if he wins tonight.
It means a different model. You're right. It means reaching out to new voters, not just trying to persuade persuadables. It requires a candidate who's bold on issues. It requires a candidate who is energetic and charismatic. It actually changes the qualifications, what a progressive candidate needs to be. It needs to be someone who really can be appealing and overcome the money just with raw charisma and with energy and with aspiration and hope.
I agree. Said it very well, my friend, as you usually do. Thank you. All the best tonight. Go Badgers and go Evers and Rainey Bryce. Thank you.
You're listening to 1590 WSMN Nashua.
USA Radio News.
As Americans head to the polls during this 2018 midterm election, the first polls will begin to close on the East Coast at 7 o'clock Eastern Time. Voters across the country are reporting long lines, broken machines, and a polling site even in Arizona was foreclosed on overnight. Meanwhile, I had a chance to catch up with some voters today as well.
And we went and had breakfast, went over the sample ballot, discussed who we were going to vote for, and just came on over. And we were surprised there were actually quite a lot of people here this morning, which was great to see.
I think it's going to be very close, so I think every vote counts.
Utah Mayor and Army National Guard Major Brent Taylor was killed in Afghanistan on Saturday. He was overseas protecting Afghan people who were voting. His wife thought it was only fitting that he returned home on the day that Americans were going to cast their ballot as well. And once the polls close, please check us out tonight for all the latest election results. This is USA Radio News. What pivotal races in New Mexico should we be paying attention to? USA Radio Network's Ken Bass reports from KALH in Alamogordo, New Mexico.
There are two national races in New Mexico that could impact the balance in Washington. Republican Mick Rich is out to unseat New Mexico junior senator, Democrat Martin Heinrich, with former Libertarian presidential candidate Gary Johnson in that mix as a spoiler. For the U.S. House, Republican candidate Yvette Harrell is fighting to keep that seat blue against a far-left Democrat candidate, Sochil Torres Small. For governor, former 7-term Republican U.S. Representative Steve Pierce faces Democrat Michelle Lujan Grisham, who also gave up her House seat to run.
Pipe bomb suspect Cesar Sayak made his first appearance in a federal court in Manhattan today. Sayak will be held without bond and faces 50 years in prison if convicted. Final look at your numbers on Wall Street today. The Dow was up 173 points to close the day at 25,635. This is USA Radio News. Recapping one of our top stories, voters across the country are casting their ballot to decide the balance of power in Congress between Democrats and Republicans. There's been a lot of talk of a blue wave. Well, Dan Senior served as an advisor to the Romney-Ryan presidential campaign in 2012. He joined CBS this morning to talk about exactly what would be a good win for both the Democrats and what would be a good win for the Republicans.
A wave is when every close race breaks in one direction. And right now, the way House Republican leaders see it is there's basically three categories of House races, all right? There are the seats that Obama won and Hillary won. So take Carlos Cabello, Florida 26, in southern Florida. They won that district, both of them. Hillary and Obama and Clinton won them by big numbers. If the Republican wins that seat, early sign of a wave. Kentucky, on the other end, which Trump won and Romney won, 2012, 2016. Andy Barr in that district, Kentucky 6. If the Democrats win that seat, early sign of a wave. And then in the middle is a seat seats in New York, like New York 19, John Faso, who's defending his seat. Obama won it once, and then Trump won it, both about 6% each. So if you get, those are like three categories of races. An Obama-Clinton seat that a Republican is holding, an Obama-Trump seat that a Republican is holding, and then a Romney-Trump seat that a Republican is holding. If they all go, we got a wave. And all those states, Kentucky, Florida, New York, we'll learn about early.
For USA Radio News, I'm Tim Berg.
It's 49 degrees. It's 7:05.
from the palatial studios at Emerson College in beautiful downtown Boston. This is the Jeff Santos Show on the Revolution Radio Network.
Welcome back. It is hour 2 of the Jeff Santos Show as we bring you as much information as we can about election 2018. Right now we are monitoring what is happening in Indiana. The Nelson Senate race in Florida looks very close with, of course, Governor Scott running against the incumbent Senator Nelson. Andrew Gillum, on the other hand, looks like he is pulling out early again. Just, a couple of percentage points here, in there, but he's up, I think, 10 points or so, over, the other challenger, both open seat here. As I said, Governor Scott is running for, Senate in Florida. And it looking good right now for Gillum, who I think is the star, in the very near future, if not already. We are going to be talking with Mark Taylor-Canfield and Greg Palast in at the bottom of the hour. But I want to give a couple of shout-outs tonight, and of course, of our listening audience here, WSMN in Nashua, to Mr. Pappas, who's running in the congressional seat currently held by Carol Shea Porter. That's a very close race. We'll continue to monitor that. Also, the governor's race, now actually expected to be a Republican shoe-in, now very close. Claire Kelly and Governor Sununu locked in. We'll try to find out more about that as well. And a shout-out to a good friend and listener, Paul Bergeron, is running for re-election as county commissioner in the great state of New Hampshire as well. Shout out to our good friend Paul. All right, it is now time to go to the great state of New Jersey. It's our Teacher Tuesday segment, and of course there is a lot of races going on in New Jersey where we find the best of the great heart, the Barracuda. And it is so great to have our good friend Melissa Tomlinson, the Associate Executive Director of Badass Teachers. Melissa, happy Election Day. How are you?
Good. How are you, Jeff?
Very good indeed. We'll play your song going out today. I'll tell you this, and just talking to a lot of people. We had Representative Barbara Lee on, the great progressive from California, earlier, and talked to our good friend Robert Craig in Wisconsin and Wisconsin Citizen Action. It seems that a lot of people are coming out to vote today who, some I think for the first time. I think it's up 6% since the 2016 election. What are you seeing in New Jersey? What are you hearing from your fellow bats around the country?
We're seeing, definitely an uptick in voter turnout. The polls are busier. People like to pay attention to what number they are at their polls. So we're seeing, those numbers definitely get up there. And they were getting up there early. So that's a good sign. We're seeing some kind of suppression of voices in some areas. Camden has a very, very big ballot question going on. Apparently there was a couple of scuffles outside of polling places and election officials being called to measure to make sure people are 100 feet away, and a couple of conflicts going on. So we're watching that one closely. We have a lot of people out on the streets there, making sure people make it to the polls so they can vote for the right to vote for an elected school board next year.
Talking with our great friend, Miss Melissa Tomlinson here on the Jeff Santos Show. So I know that there are a number of congressional seats that are in relatively, I guess you could say, safe Republican districts. But I heard a lot of people from Morristown and South Jersey that were, voted Republican in the past. But look at Trump, and they just screech to the point, and a lot of these are women, and we hear that suburban women just cannot stand Donald Trump. What are you seeing on that front? I mean, from fellow teachers to people you see at the grocery store, is this sort of a scenario where just people can't stand anymore to look at Donald Trump? I know I talked to family members and friends of mine who are women. They don't want to even see his face. It's got to that point. What are you noticing in New Jersey, and how are these seats looking tonight?
The activity before the elections was definitely kind of female-oriented. A lot of women volunteers getting involved in canvassing, phone banking, getting involved in Democratic Party committees, and anything that they could do, basically, so they could kind of drown out the president's voice. So yeah, it's definitely nothing's going to change unless we make the change ourselves. It has come down to we have a group down here that kind of goes from Camden County all the way down to Cape May County in South Jersey, that formed as a result of the 2016 elections. And that group's 8,000 women. It's a women or identifying as women only group. And it strongly encourages any kind of political activity and involvement that people are willing to do, and the administrators of that group and the steering committee directors find ways for people to get involved, answer questions, put people in touch with people that can lead them in the direction that they want to lead to, so that energy becomes focused and it gets built upon.
Yeah, no doubt. Again, talking with Melissa Tomlinson, again, the Associate Executive Director of the Great Badass Teachers here on the Jeff Santos Show.